All right, guys, welcome to my 2025 running year in review. As a runner, I've experienced my share of breakthroughs, heartbreaks, and everything in between. I want to make this retrospective as unflinching and honest as possible while being mindful that I want to provide some perspectives and experiences that can ultimately help you on your running journey. Just a brief intro about my running career, if you will. I am not athletic in the slightest. I have no natural talent for running. I ran my first half marathon 20 years ago, finished it in 3 hours. It was only about 2 years ago that I started to run full marathons. And I hit all the typical challenges and walls and obstacles along the way. I want to get that out of the way first. I am not some sort of talented runner. I simply enjoy what the sport brings me in terms of mental health and steady self-improvement. And it's a really fun sport. It rewards a lot of patience. Those of you who are also running know that the gains can sometimes take years, if not decades, to realize. It's a sport of patience. And I would say that this year for me has really been hallmarked by a term that I started using about a year ago, but I still stand by to this day, which is trust the process. Sometimes in running, the gains just seem so gradual, minuscule. It doesn't feel like you're improving at all. But every once in a while, there's these things that come along that surprise you. Let me try to break down my year in running in two ways. One way is just contrasting the first half of 2025 to the second half, because there were definitely events that hallmarked my breakthroughs, my highlights and lowlights of the year. But there's also another layer to look at it, which is the mental and the physical. Because when you reach a certain level in the sport, the mindset or the mental starts to become much more important as you start to get more acclimated to the physical rigors of running lots and lots of miles. So let me just talk about the mindset aspect first. And this is for the whole year. I would say that this was probably my best year in running so far. I hit my personal best, or PB, this year at the age of 43, 3 times, twice in half marathons and once in the full marathon. It's also a year that my gratitude, my appreciation for the sport really increased. I started to watch a lot of other athletes talk about the mental side of the sport. That's been great because I cannot match them when it comes to raw speed or talent or even perseverance. But there's a lot of things about the mindset of running that is quite relevant at any skill level. Things like breaking things down into goals, pushing through when you feel like you've plateaued. And I think most importantly for me, just this gratitude of being able to run, period. Just enjoying being out there. I'm not saying that it was a perfect year for me. I did have cases where I felt the runner's blues, where it was hard to get motivated to go out there and run. But for the majority of the year, I really tried to internalize this idea of that running is a privilege. You don't take it for granted. There's also things that are just kind of a buildup, literally and metaphorically. I internalized some important lessons, especially given how 2024 went last year, where I was injured at times and I was trying to go too fast. I was trying to chase something. I really internalized some important lessons this year. If I could summarize it in 2 ways, it would be, number 1, run it your way. You can be inspired by other people. You can take techniques, mindsets from others, but at the end of the day, it's your body, it's your performance. So run it your own way. The other one is just really focusing in on low intensity training. Some people call it zone 2, zone 3. I don't really like that classification. I think it's just about running at a low enough intensity that you feel like you could do it forever. I heard someone say this, which is when you finish a run, if you feel like you could do it again, do the exact same run again, that probably means you're running at the right intensity. And I think it also had something to do with The more miles I run, the more I'm okay with being slower, lower intensity, and not chasing. Because if you only have a few hours a week to run, you don't put in the time or the commitment, you're always trying to chase in the limited time that you have. This year, I really tried to lean into just enjoying the experience. And while enjoying the experience, not trying to prove something to myself or to other people, not trying to break my own personal records for a fun run, just trying to go at the speed that I should be going at. Okay, so that's enough of an intro. That's the mindset overall 2025 recollection or reflection. Let's talk about the highlights. What I'm most proud of, one of them is just having my highest mileage year, 3,000 kilometers. I ran about 2,600 kilometers last year, this year 3,000, and it really speaks to consistency. It averages out to about 250 kilometers a month. The big thing about this is doing it while staying injury-free. The only way that I could run this much was to get out of my own way, to not get hurt. The way to not get hurt is to run slower with lower intensity. Trust the process and things will fall into place. That was huge for me this year. Other highlights are things like race records. I believe I ran 2 full marathons this year, 2 half marathons this year. I hadn't run a half marathon in maybe 2.5 years. So I finally broke a sub 2-hour half marathon. I ran the first one, I think it was at the beginning of March. I finished it in 1 hour, 52 minutes. And then at the end of the month, I ran another half marathon in 1 hour and 47 minutes. For someone with my ability and skill level, being someone who ran their first half marathon in 3 hours, just elation, just feeling so much joy. It was actually one of my friends, Jiao Ge, who paced me to the 147 half marathon. And that was also the first time someone had paced me in a race. It made all the difference. Every time I wanted to just quit or slow down, Jiao Ge would just motivate me, push me. But the psychological benefit of having someone run beside you, being so supportive, even doing things like picking up water for you at the aid stations, that was huge. I truly couldn't have had such an amazing result by my standards without his support. And it really made me see the power for the first time in my running career of the power of having a pacer. Because I'm mostly a lone wolf. I run most of my races alone. I don't even go to races with a group or with other people. I just try to do it myself. But this year was kind of the first realization or inkling that I had that I might have to partner up with more people for training and for racing in order to reach a higher level of performance. So that happened in March of the first half of the year. Yes, I did hit a personal best or PB in the full marathon. That was at the end of October. That was the second half of the year in Tianjin. I went 4:07, 4 hours and 7 minutes. A little disappointing because I didn't hit sub 4 this year. I ran a marathon earlier in the first half of the year. I think it was in May. It was in Lanzhou. It was more like a fun marathon because the elevation on that was brutal. So I didn't go out to chase some sort of PB, which for me was a 4:10 marathon that I established last year in 2024. Ultimately, I'm happy with a 4:07 marathon for the year, but I'm still a little disappointed that I didn't break sub 4. I think the challenge for me was just running through the summer. I couldn't really stack up enough long runs to create the endurance that I needed to go sub 4. There was too much of a break in between during the summer where I was running, but I wasn't really doing the long runs that I needed to excel in the full marathon. So maybe this is just another way of saying I need to be more locked in. Overall, I still see it as a positive. Hitting a PB in the full marathon, shouldn't really discount that. I just want more for next year. I also want to talk about a personal highlight of mine that it's mostly on the physical side, but I think it's connected to the mental too, which is improving my running economy and form. through months and months of repetitive practice, reflection, thinking about it, doing it, I managed to shorten my stride and also improved a lot of my technique around running. That's not to say that my running form is beautiful or anything like that. It's just, relatively speaking, a lot better than it was a year ago. What happened was in 2024, I actually injured myself during the last full marathon of the year. And I think a lot of that had to do with my bad form. It was very frustrating heading into this year. I believe I was still hurt in January, February, where my mileage was quite low. It was a really humbling moment because it really forced me to look inside myself and think about what are the things that I need to do to ensure my longevity in this sport. So I did half the things right, which is improving my form and my stride and things like that. The other half I'll talk about, which is I should have still spent more time in the gym for strength work. But we'll get to that in the lowlights. Another thing that I am proud of this year, a highlight if you will, it could be framed as a lowlight, but I prefer to think of it as a highlight, which is just being realistic with myself and understanding my own limitations and capabilities as a runner. For example, I was going to run the Hong Kong Marathon at the beginning of the year in January. I dropped out of it because I was hurt. I figured that discretion was a better part of valor. I ran my first trail race in September, a 25K in Suzhou, and I DNF'd the race. I dropped out with maybe 3 kilometers to go just because I was overheating, I was feeling badly, I was feeling sick, and I just decided that it wasn't really worth chasing a completion record for something that didn't matter. Maybe the biggest no-show regret of my year was I had dropped a 50K trail race in Wuxi in November just because I felt like I was not adequately prepared training-wise, mentally for that race. It had killer elevation as well. I wasn't training on hills. I felt like I could have probably finished a race, but it would have really cost me physically in terms of recovery time. To add to the list of excuses, there was also a lot of things going on for me as a freelancer in Q4 of this year, which I'll talk about in a separate video about my freelancer retrospective. Suffice to say, I had dropped a total of 2 races this year and DNF'd another one. Not my shining moment, but I am happy with the idea that I am just listening to my own body and also my own idea of what I could be prepared for. So that was a net positive. I know there's a lot of highlights here, but bear with me. I'm trying to find the positives in the year. The next one is just, to put it simply, I stopped chasing. I stopped chasing unrealistic training expectations. I stopped chasing being in running social groups. My run club activities dropped to a minimum. I wasn't really enjoying them. I didn't really feel like I was getting a lot out of them. Maybe this will change in the future, but if I wasn't enjoying it, I wasn't really wanting to do it. I also cut down things like interval repeats. I wanted to focus on tempo runs instead because for my speed and skill level, which is trying to break a sub 4-hour marathon, the speed work didn't really matter all that much, if I'm being honest with myself. And I try to be honest with myself. And at the end of the day, just being happy with where I am right now in this moment as a runner. I recognize that 2024, I had a much faster initial improvement because it was the first time I started really getting into marathoning as a sport and really started to systematically train. But this year was the year of buckling down, trusting the process, being patient, and being resilient. Even things like managing to run through the entire Shanghai summer heat in extreme humidity. I'm super proud of doing that. I went from someone who couldn't run more than 2 kilometers in that heat to plugging away and hitting 10Ks, 15Ks. Admittedly, not super long distances, but they were enough to sustain the running volume throughout the treacherous summer. So all in all, those are kind of the things that I'm proud of, I'm happy about. And just in terms of lowlights, misses, what I can improve, I'll start with one that I probably didn't expect to say in this video, but I will. I think I was just too online this year. I knew that I was trying to be realistic with myself. But I still felt like I was too plugged into online discourse. I still care too much about what other people thought about me in random running chat groups. And I was still letting my ego get in the way. I still committed the cardinal sin at times during the year, which is comparing myself to others. That's just a terrible idea. There's always going to be people faster than you, slower than you. It's only the self-improvement that matters. It's only the best practices that matter. Running is a competition against yourself. There's a group chat that I'm really happy and really proud of being a member of. I really enjoyed interactions with many of the members in the chat. But because I wanted to focus on training and not oversharing things and getting pulled into discourse, I dropped out of that group for about a month to just focus on my training. And it was a really good exercise. So I'm thinking about doing that again in this coming year because I'm back in the group and now, once again, I'm being too online and too distracted from the actual running itself. So I have to be mindful and wary of that. The other things in terms of misses is just not enough gym work. I think there's a lot more that I need to do to strengthen my core and lower leg strength. I really got into the habit of running a lot, but I recognize that in order for me to reach the next set of milestones and breakthroughs, especially for the next year, I need to do more work in the gym, work on myself in the gym. There's also things around discipline. I got a little bit more lax this year around stretching and cooling down and a lot of the preparatory stuff because I developed a bit of perhaps overconfidence about myself. My recovery is now a lot better. I can run a full marathon and just be back on my feet the next day. Now, some people may say that's probably because I'm not pushing myself hard enough, and that's probably true. But the other thing I'm really proud of is that because I've logged so many miles, I am now much better at recovery. But it should not mean that I skip the recovery routines, the nutrition, sleeping well, stretching, warming up, cooling down, all of that stuff. So I definitely have to be mindful of feeling that I'm too invincible when it comes to recovery, because I am definitely better at it now in terms of pure recovery, but I'm also getting older, so I have to be cautious around that. Now, I guess I'll use this video to also talk a bit about New Year's resolutions or goals for next year. This may end up being a terrible projection or broadcast, but I'll go ahead and just state it for the record. My goals for 2026, I want to be able to finish a 20K trail race because I dropped out of one this year and I would really like to finish one in 2026. I would like to run a 3-hour 50-minute marathon. I would like to run a 1-hour 45-minute half marathon, so slightly improve on my time from this year. Last but not least, I would like to maintain my mileage next year. So I ran 3,000 kilometers this year. I'd like to also have 3,000 kilometers in 2026. That's pretty much it. That's my year. If you made it this far, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next year.